We now know how Russiagate got started, and we know that it was all a lie started by the Hillary Clinton campaign. That the Hillary Clinton campaign realized she was in trouble because of her email scandal, which had broken in 2015 in the wake of Benghazi. We found these emails of hers that were weird, and people were like, what server was that on, and so on. And it created a problem for her all the way up to Election Day 2016.
But I could see them and hear them in my ear, and they said, Tulsi Gabbard, you're coming out and criticizing Hillary Clinton and her foreign policy record. Aren't you afraid of what she'll do to you? He asked me this on live television on MSNBC. And you're laughing. I laughed too. I was like, no, I am not afraid of what Hillary Clinton can do to me.
Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard take the stage like a tag team of verbal assassins, going straight for Hillary Clinton with precision and zero mercy. Every campaign misstep, every decade-old controversy, every carefully curated photo op is dissected and thrown under the spotlight. Their critiques expose the cracks in her polished persona, revealing contradictions, scandals, and political miscalculations that undercut her claim to the throne she so desperately chased. This isn't polite analysis or soft criticism. It's a relentless dismantling, served with razor-sharp wit and unflinching honesty.
Of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
First of all, she came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
They are using the same old tactic that the deep state's propaganda arm in the media uses. Whenever they come across something that is true and that doesn't go along with whatever their narrative is that they're trying to shove down the throats of the American people, they first usually ignore it, as they did when I first released these documents.
Megyn Kelly's incisive critique slices through the polished facade of establishment politics, exposing Hillary Clinton's persistent disconnect with everyday voters despite decades in the public eye. She strips away the layers of rehearsed empathy and carefully scripted speeches to reveal a politician more obsessed with image than impact. Kelly lampoons Hillary's constant rebranding efforts, turning every campaign slogan and stage gesture into a biting punchline about squandered chances and misaligned priorities.
Stole his first term as president. These absolute liars who run around trying to act like they're the protectors of democracy completely ruined it, tried to undermine it at every turn and at the highest levels with lies, with out-and-out lies that were really serious, and changed foreign policy and changed the course of history in this country in Trump's presidency. And there must be accountability. There has to be actual criminal accountability for those who lied. And I can't wait to see this administration.
Tulsi Gabbard delivers a piercing insider's critique, dismantling Hillary Clinton's foreign policy record with meticulous precision. From controversial actions in the Middle East to close relationships with influential elites, Gabbard exposes a history riddled with contradictions and ethical compromises. Her analysis highlights how Hillary's policies frequently undermine the very principles she professed to uphold, revealing a politician whose drive for power often eclipsed any commitment to genuine progress.
That all of these pieces fit quite seamlessly together, creating a very clear timeline that shifted from before the election, the intelligence community almost uniformly saying essentially that Russia is trying to sow discord in the US election, but has no preference for one candidate over another. And then all of a sudden, Trump wins the election, surprising many people, both here and abroad, as we've learned in later documents that we've reviewed, that throughout that campaign, Russia believed that Hillary Clinton would win the election.
Together, Megyn Kelly and Tulsi Gabbard mount a relentless takedown, exposing every crack in Hillary Clinton's carefully constructed armor. They dissect scandals, missteps, and the repeated inability to earn authentic trust, stripping away the veneer of inevitability. Their combined scrutiny dismantles the myth, revealing a career marked more by controversy and missed opportunities than by accomplishment. It's an unflinching roast, leaving no space for spin or excuses. A candid reckoning that transforms the once untouchable figure into a thoroughly exposed political operator.
And our audience knows this, and you guys, but just for the record, let's play SOT 10.
I do think that he knows that he's an illegitimate president. I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows that there were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. And as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
We're trying to tell the American people the truth and expose these people, many of whom you just showed, for who they are as the propaganda arm of the deep state, which would have no power and no influence if they weren't able to feed their lies into a willing spokesperson through the propaganda media.
Hillary Clinton's political journey is a study in contradictions, a tumultuous ride of soaring promises and bitter letdowns. Tulsi Gabbard doesn't just highlight her errors. She exposes the gap between Clinton's polished public persona and the chaotic realities behind the scenes. It's the story of a politician skilled at commanding attention, yet repeatedly falling short of genuinely connecting with the people she professed to serve.
So what is so concerning about what Hillary Clinton is doing here is she is not only calling me a traitor, she is not only trying to smear my character, she's sending a warning out to every veteran, every single American, anyone who stands up against the warmongering foreign policies that really are her legacy, that have been so destructive and costly to my brothers and sisters in uniform.
Kelly's critique hones in on Hillary's communication style. Polished but empty, rehearsed yet lacking authenticity. She portrays a politician whose words often sounded scripted, as if read from a teleprompter crafted to impress focus groups rather than inspire real connection. Kelly underscores how Hillary's grandiose campaign speeches, filled with lofty promises and sweeping visions, often fell flat with voters exhausted by political doublespeak. This wasn't a leader igniting a movement. It was a politician clinging to relevance in a fast-changing political landscape. At the same time, Tulsi Gabbard adds an insider's lens to the takedown, dissecting Hillary's foreign policy with the precision of a seasoned strategist aware of real-world stakes. Tulsi confronts the controversies, from Libya's destabilization to Syria's chaos, showing how Hillary's choices often had far-reaching, damaging consequences. Her critique exposes a pattern of interventionist policies that ran counter to the ideals of peace and diplomacy Hillary professed. Together, Kelly and Gabbard argue that this juggling act only widened the gap of mistrust among voters, who saw past the carefully curated facade.
And as she got closer to Election Day, she decided to concoct two lies about Donald Trump to distract from her email scandal. She got the Steele dossier through this Fusion GPS company that her campaign paid, and she got this group CrowdStrike, which was the one responsible for the hack into that. That's the one that said that the Russians hacked the DNC email.
Megyn Kelly doesn't hold back on Hillary's media manipulation, exposing how the Clinton campaign controlled coverage and punished dissent, creating an environment where criticism was met with aggressive backlash. This wasn't the accountable, transparent leadership voters expected. It was a tightly managed PR operation aimed at shielding a fragile image at all costs. Tulsi Gabbard sharpens the critique further, highlighting Hillary's failure to grasp the shifting political landscape. She emphasizes how the campaign ignored the growing frustrations of working-class voters, dismissing their struggles and leaving openings for opponents to exploit, turning supporters into skeptics. The roast also zeroes in on the infamous email scandal, a defining misstep that Kelly and Tulsi agree was more than a minor hiccup. Tulsi underscores the wider implications, framing it as part of a broader pattern of questionable judgment and ethical lapses that haunted Hillary's career.
And I resigned as vice chair of the DNC in 2016, specifically so that I could campaign against Hillary Clinton in that Democratic primary.
Megyn Kelly highlights the stark contradictions in Hillary's career, showing how her rise by breaking glass ceilings often clashed with campaign tactics that undermine the solidarity expected of a feminist icon. Tulsi Gabbard adds depth, noting missed opportunities to forge authentic coalitions, with political calculations that alienated potential allies. As the roast unfolds, Kelly and Tulsi go beyond recounting failures, dismantling the myth of inevitability surrounding Hillary's political path. They challenge the notion that her victory was guaranteed, exposing a campaign riddled with strategic missteps, overconfidence, and repeated underestimation of opponents. This takedown strips away media hype, revealing a campaign struggling to connect with a diverse and skeptical electorate. Both also examine Hillary's polarized legacy. Kelly emphasizes her ability to command loyalty while symbolizing frustration and disillusionment for others, and Tulsi underscores that Hillary's career stands as a cautionary tale about the limits of political ambition when not paired with genuine responsiveness to public concerns.
One of the pieces that Glenn and I were getting close to in the discussion was the Hillary piece of this and the evidence, because that is, they do name a couple of names in this appendix on who came up with this scam. And the name that we keep seeing over and over, as one of them at least, was Julianne Smith. Schellenberger writes Julianne. It's Julianne. He writes, the alleged creator of the plan was Julianne Smith, a Clinton policy advisor.
The conclusion hits with undeniable force. Kelly and Tulsi's combined critique frames Hillary Clinton not as a victim of circumstance but as the architect of her own political decline. They assert that her legacy will be remembered less for groundbreaking achievements and more for missed opportunities, eroded trust, and an image that buckled under relentless scrutiny. This is more than a roast. It's a reckoning, urging a move beyond myths and media spin to confront the complex realities of one of America's most examined political figures. Kelly and Tulsi emphasize that in politics, as in life, authenticity and accountability outweigh polished speeches and curated personas. They dissect not just her campaign missteps, but the very DNA of her political persona, revealing a figure who aimed to be everything to everyone and in trying became nothing to anyone.
Also, in this latest House report, they talk about how they also in the House, this is the House in 2020, pointing out that the ICA of 2017 ignored evidence that Putin seemed to be protecting Hillary Clinton in a couple of ways. It did not mention, for example, that Putin chose not to leak info he appeared to have on Hillary Clinton's health, including that she suffered from psycho-emotional problems and was on daily tranquilizers. We don't know whether that's true. We know that Putin appeared to have that intel in his pocket and chose not.
Leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I am not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people.
Megyn Kelly exposes the calculated construction of Hillary Clinton's public persona, revealing a politician who meticulously shaped an image meant to appeal broadly, but ultimately resonated with few. The polished speeches, rehearsed empathy, and constant efforts to seem relatable rang hollow, echoing without genuine connection. Kelly's critique strikes at the heart of political authenticity. When optics trump substance, voters notice, and that gap can be fatal. Tulsi Gabbard adds a sharp, insider perspective, dissecting Hillary's political strategy with particular focus on foreign policy. The legacy of military interventions, cozy ties with global elites, and decisions that destabilized regions are scrutinized with unflinching precision. Kelly emphasizes Hillary's rise relied on compromises that often sacrifice core values, while Tulsi highlights missed opportunities to take principled stands, showing how relentless political maneuvering ultimately eroded public trust.
So the Russians were able to hack Leonard, and that's where they saw the plan. And we now have in the Durham Annex, like full screen grabs of the Russian memos that the Dutch got their hands on and leaked to us, where the Russians are recounting exactly what they saw Leonard discussing about this Hillary Clinton fan and emissary, Julianne Smith, and how they were going to stop Trump, undermine Trump, but most importantly, distract from Hillary's email scandal.
Hillary's media strategy comes under fire, with Megyn Kelly highlighting how attempts to control the narrative often backfired. She details how efforts to silence dissent and shape coverage fostered defensiveness instead of transparency. Tulsi Gabbard adds that in an era demanding openness, this approach only fueled public skepticism. The roast then turns to Hillary's connection with voters, particularly working-class communities who felt neglected. Kelly notes how campaign messaging often ignored real economic concerns, leaving space for opponents to exploit. Tulsi emphasizes that this failure to engage widened the gap between Hillary and the electorate she claimed to represent. The infamous email scandal is dissected mercilessly. Kelly mocks the fumbling damage control, while Tulsi frames it as part of a broader pattern of poor judgment and ethical lapses that eroded credibility. Finally, the critique examines contradictions in Hillary's stance on women's rights, exposing inconsistencies between image and action.
This woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent in order to distract from her own legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian.
Megyn Kelly highlights the tension between Hillary's feminist messaging and political tactics that sometimes undermine female rivals. Tulsi Gabbard adds that these contradictions weakened what could have been a unifying message, prioritizing political pragmatism over solidarity. As the critique deepens, Kelly and Tulsi dismantle the myth of inevitability surrounding Hillary's political ascent, arguing that her campaign's overconfidence blinded her to real threats and shifting political currents. Kelly points out how she underestimated grassroots movements and the public's craving for authentic change, while Tulsi underscores that this miscalculation was a fatal flaw in an era demanding transparency and sincerity. The roast concludes with a decisive assessment of Hillary's legacy, reminding that political success requires more than breaking glass ceilings. It demands connection and trust with the people who matter most. In the end, Hillary Clinton's story serves as both a cautionary tale and a guidepost for the future of leadership.